congratulations are in order to the entire S Magico team. Welcoming Shri Prithviraj Chavan, former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, BITS or Berkeley, or the startup that he did in the Bay Area.
A chip called 4004. Those who are familiar with old days and old technology, that is the first microprocessor ever.
I'm sure, like Bitsian startups, we always make it big.
Hello everyone, a very good afternoon and thank you so much for being here. First off, of course, congratulations are in order to the entire S Magico team for a wonderful facility. Many congratulations to Shardul, many congratulations to Shreyas.
Thank you.
And obviously wishing you the very best for what lies ahead. And I have no doubt, given our track record of having you as partners on the stuff that we've done, but even otherwise, that you're going to go into a bigger space, in a brighter space very soon.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much. Thank you.
Obviously, I'd like to start off by welcoming Shri Prithviraj Chavan, former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, to this facility. It's such a great honor and privilege to have him here, not only because of his political accomplishments, and more so because of his love for science, right? And I think today we won't talk about all of the stuff you can get off Wikipedia, but I think we should focus on the things that you don't know about him.
That's
Right? He's been fascinated with this field since he was very young. Of course, you know his academic accomplishments. It's so rare to have someone in public life with the kind of pedigree that Mr. Chavan has. Whether it was BITS or Berkeley or the startup that he did in the Bay Area. Before doing a startup in the Bay Area or anywhere else in the world was a cool thing. I've seen him, working across portfolios at the center and in the state for many years. It's been a great privilege to observe just how deeply he gets into subjects that he cares about. This is a person who would be the last person in the library, even when he was Chief Minister. It was the greatest joy seeing him sit with his stationery in his library, work on his files, work on his speeches, do his research. And it's really a masterclass because here's a person running the state, but with such a great desire to learn about the subjects that one has to get into as an administrator. His tenure at the center was also remarkable. I think, perhaps one of the greatest assets in the Prime Minister's office. And I think, his love for science, many of us may be familiar with, but otherwise I must tell you his fascination for tech knows no bounds. I think there is no new technology, no new gadgetry that he will not ask about or play with. And it's not just, superficial playing. I think he wants to get into the weeds, really figure out what is powering this, what implications it will have for consumers, what implications it will have for governance, so on and so forth. So I think it is a real privilege to have him here and to chat with him about subjects that all of us in the room care about. And obviously, Nilay as well from the Geo Institute, thank you so much for joining us. So what an honor. We've chatted offline and informally about so much of this, but I think there is no audience small or large enough for your thoughts. And if you allow me, maybe we'll get started with the first question to you. And that really, I think, sir, you're a very rare commodity in public life who's seen so many phases of tech, right? A lot of us in the room have only seen tech in its blossomed phase, right? We've not kind of seen the trenches, right? You were in Berkeley, in California, at a very exciting time, right? The late 60s, when it was a time of rapid change. And in fact, there were a lot of social implications of that rapid change. So maybe, if you could start us off by giving us that vantage point view, which is that how have you seen technology transform from an idea with great promise to something that has permeated our lives so very deeply today, what are the big kind of takeaways for you in the last 5 decades or so? And I think it would serve all of us well if you start with that view before we get into the nitty-gritties of AI and other things which are buzzwords.
So,
Thank you, Naman. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I think not very well deserved, but still, you've been a very close friend for a very long time. I was fortunate that I got education that I did, particularly starting off with BITS Pilani. When we entered BITS Pilani, it was not a BITS at all, it was University of Rajasthan. After 2 years, it became BITS. And then a 5-year integrated course, just one subject, no dual degree, nothing. Very rigorous, formed a lot of friendships across the country. Truly a cosmopolitan institution. And it shaped me hugely, those 5 years in harsh climes of Rajasthan desert. But I think it toughened everybody who went to Pilani. Ours, Vinerji also spent some time there. Then I was fortunate, I was not very clear what to do next. Both my parents were in politics. My father was a member of parliament in the Nehru cabinet, he was a minister in Indira Gandhi cabinet. He passed away. Then my mother followed him as a member of parliament from my constituency. But my parents never insisted that I join politics. They told me whatever you want to do. My father was a lawyer on the criminal side, a very famous lawyer. But they didn't say if you want to come to politics or law, whatever. He said, whatever you want to do. And he let me choose engineering. I'm not very clear what to do after graduation. Should I go back to my hometown? But then I got a UNESCO scholarship to work in Germany, took 6 months scholarship there, and then I realized that I must do a higher degree, got into Berkeley. And most productive was a couple of years of my life, not only because of technology, which is one part of it, but what was happening in UC Berkeley in 1960s, late 1960s, which Naman referred to, was nothing short of a revolution on American campuses. And we actually got to experience the American democracy. There was the anti-Vietnam War movement, there was the Black Panther movement, there was the hippie cult happening there. And on the other side, there's great science being created. I remember when I was there, we had 12 Nobel laureates on the faculty of UC California, Berkeley. And that was the quality of science that was being created. The Department of Energy was creating more powerful atomic bombs and also creating new elements. All of them are named after the place, Californium, Berkeley, all those were invented there. So hugely academic as well as social. I think if there was free speech movement, when politics was not allowed on Berkeley campuses, people students occupied the campus. Very interesting thing, shaped my political views. Did some, as Naman said, something which you now call a startup. Wasn't called a startup then, but tried to do something. And then I decided to come back to India. It was a tricky decision because after staying in America for 5 years and working at the front line of technology to coming back to uncertain future was a little difficult. But I did come back and then continued the urge to do something new. Since I had worked in the defense sector in America, particularly in NASA aerospace sector, the Indian defense people wanted some few products developed which were not allowed for import. For example, anti-submarine computers, anti-submarine warfare computers and all that. Much of it was to buck the import ban which was there. We did something for a few years, and during those few years, very exciting technology. While I was in Berkeley, I must share this with you. I remember when we were working in a company in Berkeley, in a Mountain View area. One fine morning, one representative of a company came to us and said, our company has produced a new product. Nobody had heard of that company. So we just gathered around the person, and then he showed me in a jewel case with cotton and all that. And there was this silicon dice there. And he said, look, this is a computer in a chip. A chip called 4004. Those who are familiar with old days and old technology, that was the first microprocessor ever. And a company, unknown company who had not heard of it, was Intel. And then rest of, as you know, is history. So I virtually saw the birth of the microprocessor era. And later on, the IBM PC. IBM was such a behemoth that there was Big Blue, because all the IBM machines were painted in blue color. And nobody could stand to IBM. And then suddenly this small company called Apple came about and created a home computer. And IBM really got shook up. And IBM said, look, we have to copy it. And then they set up a special team in Florida and created what we call today the IBM PC. And then again the battle between the PC and Apple continues even today. So one was witness to these technologies happening. I remember in our startup in Delhi, computers were not allowed to be imported at all. But we needed something, so we just said that if you're not allowed computers to be imported, we'll build one. And based on a microprocessor chip like Z80, if you've heard of it, it's all old days. But we built a computer. The entire main memory of that computer was 256 kilobytes. In those travels, I suddenly realized that this is a revolution which is coming. You can't stop it. But then, if you don't have access to English language, this revolution bypassed 95% of the people who do not have access to English language. And my visit to Taiwan and China and Japan told me that those people are working in their languages. So we took upon ourselves to do some dabbling in Indian language computing. And the credit must go to one IIT Kanpur engineer who was doing his master's project. And he had developed a terminal, a multilingual terminal which worked on Unix and was hooked up to a DEC machine. And we looked at it, we got chatting, we got friends with them. And I sort of argued. There were some companies like DCM Data Products, which is a very big computer company back then in our times. They created a Hindi computer, completely ab initio from scratch.
Shabdamala, I think.
Huh?
Shabdamala.
That word processor is Shabdamala. But the computer was called Siddharth, after the name of one of the founders in DCM family. And I didn't agree with it. I said, don't reinvent the wheel. You have an IBM PC which allows you to plug in cards. So let's do something taking the existing hardware of IBM PC, which is being produced by literally thousands of companies in Taiwan and America and everywhere. Let's plug in a card. And we worked on a design, and so using a 68,000 processor, which this IIT Kanpur engineers used for a terminal, we successfully developed a card which was plugged into IBM PC, and it gave access to all Indian languages simultaneously. I'm talking about very old, I mean like 70s, not today. Today everything is possible. There's big fights about how to design the keyboard. I mean, I wish somebody writes a book on what happened. Literally fights how to design the code for information interchange, which is called ISKI, how to standardize it with the ISO and all that, big fights. But finally you got something, a deliverable product where any computer could be upgraded to multilingual computer by just addition of a card. That is a very scientific, very satisfying work as an engineer for me. A lot of people worked on it, of course. But that was my foray in the sense that we had to work in our languages, Indian languages, otherwise this will bypass us. And then while that was going on, an accidental meeting with late Rajiv Gandhi, because he wanted to introduce computers, but they realized that if it's all in English, nothing will work. So he found out if anybody is working in Indian language, and we introduced to him. And he saw it and then accidentally discovered that I had a political background. because I didn't flaunt my political background. I wanted to work as an engineer. And so in 91, Lok Sabha election, my mother was a sitting MP from Karad, which is the constituency I represent. One fine morning, I got a phone call, my mother got a phone call saying that let Prithviraj contest Karad Lok Sabha in 91. It was a big surprise, but I knew that this is a very big platform. Whatever I was doing as an engineer was nothing compared to what you do as a member of parliament, policy and all that. There was a lot of leg pulling by political leadership. They didn't like the third person from the family, my father, mother, and then me, representing Karad. And so, but I survived. And unfortunately, late Rajiv Gandhi was looking for a team of youngsters in 91 with some international outlook, some technology outlook, with some political background to connect with the grassroots. And I fitted that bill. There were others like Ranga Kumar Mangalam, or I think Chidambaram and all that. But unfortunately, late Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated and politics turned. From that 91, I am virtually cut off from technology, except being curious about what's happening and all. Later on, after contesting, winning Lok Sabha 3 times, I was made a minister in 2004 by Indira Ji in the Manmohan Singh government. So I don't know how, but they gave me the Prime Minister's office as a portfolio. I didn't realize it then, but it was such a powerful portfolio that you looked after the entire country, you looked after different ministries, and coordination job was there. And more than that, coordination between the political leadership, which was Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, and the government leadership, which is Dr. Manmohan Singh, to make things work, because there were instances where there are issues there, we had to paper it over. And so great 6 years, and I was also at that time Space Commission member and Atomic Energy Commission member. Up till that time, Space Commission and Atomic Energy Commission, which is the highest decision-making bodies, were always manned by scientists, Kakodkar, Chidambaram and all. But Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said, no, I want some political person to be my eyes and ears, because it's a very important position. And so I was a member for both science, both Atomic Energy Commission and Space Commission, and I got to see the space program and atomic energy program at a very, very close range, which I don't think no other person would have from politics, because the scientists retire after some time and they cut off. But we can continue. So great experience. And then 2009, I was a minister for Prime Minister's office, then I was minister for personnel, which is the HR function of Government of India, IAS, IPS, UPSC and all that. And then 2009 also I was given an additional charge of being the Minister for Science and Technology. Science, technology, CSIR, biotechnology, earth sciences, IMD and all that. But I was enjoying that very much, international collaboration. Everybody wanted to collaborate with India because potential was great. But suddenly one fine morning I got a midnight call saying that I had to go to Maharashtra as a Chief Minister. I had never worked in Maharashtra before. I mean, if you had asked me about the districts in Maharashtra, it would have been difficult for me to, because it was completely my constituency in Delhi and nothing in between. But I came, and the training that we had as an engineer or working in America and all that, I knew that a little bit of hard work and we'll be able to manage it. I think I had a fairly successful tenure for 4 years. And I took some tough decisions which my alliance partners did not like. And they brought down my government in 2014. It was a coalition government between Congress and NCP. The government was brought down. And once the government was brought down, we couldn't hope to win, and BJP won. So that was a political passage. And after that, I'm a member of Legislative Assembly from Karad. We hope to contest again. And I'm in now state policy. I would have been equally happy to go back to Delhi. There was an opportunity. This Lok Sabha election I was offered to contest my hometown Lok Sabha seat by our alliance partners NCP. They didn't have a candidate. When the offer came from the party president, I readily agreed because I had contested 4 times before. But then they put a condition that you'll have to contest an R symbol, that is NCP symbol, which I refused. So that was the end of the Lok Sabha aspirations in this Lok Sabha election. Now, I'm continued to be a member of Legislative Assembly. Unfortunately, science is not a priority in state government at all. The least of the important thing, and it's just somebody does it, something, some commission here and there. And I'm really now afraid that with new technology, the AI technology coming out, how will you regulate that? Will regulation be left at only some engineers, or will there be a political oversight, whether it's Delhi or even state government? And unless people who are comfortable with technology, make policy, I'm afraid what will happen, we don't know. And if somebody may, a favorite individual with some science background may do policy, and that may have his own personal biases or her own personal biases, and I don't know what will happen. So more than the opportunities that this field offers, I'm worried about the risks that are there. And so are we prepared to shape legislation, regulation, because it's a completely unknown future. And I think I have seen, as I said, the computer technology, birth of the computer technology. At that time also people said it is a revolution. It was a revolution. But what's happening today is nothing compared to anything that has happened in the past. I mean, you can only compare it to invention of a wheel, or invention of fire, or invention of alphabet to write written word. That kind of a magnitude, even bigger than that. And so one is afraid that how do you train political leaders to understand this, to appreciate this technology? I mean, we can't become experts. Using phone is what we do. Beyond that, we don't understand. And it's frightening speed that the technology is moving. And should it be allowed to just continue unregulated, or some regulation which is not all encompassing? There are threats, many threats that we read about. What will happen to financial systems, what will happen to social equity and all that. Worry something. So is the current political leadership capable of supervising this whole new technology and regulating it so that the equity balance is not lost completely? Thank you.
In an absolute masterclass. We could have gone on listening. I don't think this conversation requires a moderator, really. A couple of things, sir. One, I just want to take limited offense to the fact that you said you survived in politics. I think we're all richer for the fact that there was a certain tenacity at play and that you've continued to operate. And we're all beneficiaries of your vision, because I think a lot of the modern infrastructure we see in the state of Mumbai and a lot of the development we see across the state, it all comes back to that tenure that he had as, Chief Minister of the state. Now, there are at least three forces, sir, which are currently at play. Factors, maybe not forces. One is that there is a certain glory in building physical infrastructure. And all decisions at the political level are essentially trade-offs. Right? You've seen that very closely. So, investments into R&D, tech, AI, so on and so forth, are really competing with stuff that gets you glamour more easily, which is visible, palpable. Two, in India, it's a fact that every day there are assaults on scientific temper. Right? I think we are a society and a culture where maintaining the integrity of science is a daily challenge. We see that at work, we see that at home. It's a reality we live with. And third, like you rightly mentioned, the speed of change is unbelievable. Right? We are living in an era where the tech that we work on may not even be relevant tomorrow morning. Right? The languages are changing rapidly, coding methodologies, platforms, operating systems, so on and so forth. Now, with these three forces at play, how do we go about upping our game, right? Both as entrepreneurs on one side, we are all, in this room, people working on tech. And second, at the policy level, like you said, there's intervention required, at the political leadership strata where someone has at least an inkling of where they want to go. Right? You were mentioning we cannot leave it just to the bureaucracy to kind of figure this out. So, anything that you have by way of guidance for entrepreneurs, which is largely, the population of this room, and two, for policymakers, right? Because you're obviously aware of these forces at play. You've been in that office. You continue to be a lawmaker. So how do we kind of contend with what's happening? We are all grappling with it.
Well, Naman, I think you raised very pertinent issues, crucial issues. My favorite theme is that you in the technology space cannot be idle bystanders. You had to fight back for the rights. You talked about scientific temper, a very important issue. Talked about research. My favorite thing is research funding. I'll just give a data point. When I was a minister in science and technology, there used to be at every 3rd of January every year since Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, there's a science congress. The date is fixed, the venue is different. It's now discontinued. But Prime Minister used to always be the chief guest for the science congress. And I, as a science minister, used to prepare speeches for the Prime Minister along with the bureaucrats. And every speech I remember, but 2-3 years I wrote those speeches. And as part of writing those speeches, we said that our current R&D expenditure is 1% of the India GDP. This is not acceptable. We must raise it to 2%. And everybody agreed. Everybody nodded, yes, yes, good thought. And if you take out the Prime Minister's speeches from 2009-10, and even before that as a PMO minister, always mentioned that from 1% we'll go to 2%. Israel is about 4%. Wow. Of the GDP, which is whatever, compared to population is huge. United States about 2.8 or something like that. Those numbers are all available. UNESCO puts out these numbers. Today, our R&D expenditure is 0.66%. Forget about 2%, it's fallen to 0.66%. I was just talking about the National Science Foundation. In 1950, United States created a National Science Foundation for basic science research. And a parallel path, they created National Institute of Health. These two agencies fund research in United States. Private grants are given to any researcher that you want to do. If you write a project, and it will be peer reviewed by experts, and if it's a good project, it's funded. I was very keen that we start a National Science Foundation in India. 2 years I was there, I couldn't do it, but the process continued. So finally, it found some articulation in the National Education Policy, which was published in 2020. It has a paragraph saying, we'll create a National Science Foundation. I was very happy. Finally something is happening. 2020. Every finance minister's speech after that had some mention. National Science Foundation. You can look at Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman's speeches. They said we'll spend 50,000 crores in 5 years. Very happy. So 10,000 crores is not a small sum. We currently spend about 800,000, 1,200 crores. Then issue was there should be law. After a couple of years, law was framed. It's called Anusandhan National Science Foundation Law. You can look it up. Then the question was, what kind of governance structure? In the United States, a top scientist is named to the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and he's the science czar, and he creates his own bureaucracy of technocrats and scientists. And government doesn't interfere at all. He gets a cabinet rank. But in India, after long effort, a governance structure was created. What is that structure? Also, I'll tell you that people talked about 50,000 crores in this year's Independence Day address to the Prime Minister. On 15th August 2024, there's a mention of the National Science Foundation. And Prime Minister says, no, we'll spend 100,000 crores, 1 lakh crores, 50,000 say it became 1 lakh crores. Very happy. But if you look at the actual allocations, in 21-22, it was 2,000 crores, not 50,000 or 1 lakh crores. And actual expenditure is 258 crores, period. That's the amount of money spent. But look at the governance structure. The governance structure of National Science Foundation is Prime Minister is the President, the Minister for Science and Minister of Education as Vice Chairs, Vice Presidents, and Secretaries to Department of Science and Technology, CSIR, Biotechnology, Electronics, and all these secretaries are members, period. So it is just a government department. The point is that scientists should fund research, not bureaucrats. It's not understood. And that's where the issue that you raise about scientific temper comes. I'm worried. Unless, and that's where I want your help, you have to fight, understand these figures, which I'm telling you, look at it yourself, and you have to fight in every forum that you meet. What is happening? And you want to become a developed country by 2047. This is just a, we're way far from reality unless we really spend good money to promote private research. What you're doing here. You can write a grant proposal and government should fund it. And then, of course, VC and other things will come in later. But nothing is happening because there is complete mistrust of the private sector. Only government should have to control everything. That's bad. I don't think we can become a science superpower unless we change this mindset.
Thank you so much, sir. In the spirit of solutioning and in the spirit of drawing everybody else into the conversation, Shardul, may I request you to talk a bit about what you are trying to build here, which is exactly in the direction of what sir was talking about, which is encouraging, newer ideas and keeping pace with the realities around us. So if you could speak to us a little bit about what you are trying to build, and subsequently we should go to Nilay and get his thoughts on what he is doing as well. So maybe we'll start with you and then go to him and then open the floor for questions as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. So here at S-Magico, what we are doing is we are using AI to drive change here in India, especially building solutions which are multimodal, multilingual, because what we believe that English as a language has, captured the entire world right now. And although there are a lot of talented people, a lot of people with great skills, but they are far behind because they lack the skills in English language specifically. Personally, I belong from Uttar Pradesh, and I have met some very genius people who, are creative, who are artistic, who have the best mindsets, who are very, articulate as well, but in their regional languages, in, let's say, a very dialect kind of a language. So what we are trying to build is we are using multimodal, multilingual models, LLM models, to bridge that gap so that India can take on the world. Just like European languages, they are German, French, they don't want to learn English. They believe in their language, their culture, their values. So we are leveraging AI to build solutions that can, uplift the people who are far behind because of this language barrier. In terms of solutioning, we are trying to work in edtech, fintech, property tech, and as well as right now we are also going overseas in Philippines and European markets with a lot of products, especially with large language models and AI. So that is the plan right now, and happy to discuss anything else as well.
Excellent. And unknown to you actually, sir was telling me a few minutes before we started the conversation that in his constituency, an area surrounding that in Karad, a lot of people fluent in the local language now have the tools, and the platforms to be able to make their voice heard. So a lot of local media stars, sir, you were mentioning, are coming to the fore because modern technologies allow them to do so without the reliance necessarily on patronage, right? And I think a lot of what is happening and is going to happen in this room or in places like Karad is happening despite the slow pace of coping at the governance levels, which is quite encouraging. Nilay, of course, you've also been a man of science. You share credentials with Mr. Chavan as well. Would be very grateful for your thoughts on how you see the landscape evolving, your work at the Institute, and what else you'd like to say about the wonderful folks at S Magico.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. Thank you, Naman. And firstly, I'd like to, I'm so honored to sit in the same panel as my senior, my super senior from BITS Pilani. He's from the 67 batch. I'm from 83. 67 to, that's almost 16 years. He joined in 62, I joined in 78. So that's a whole 2-3 generations of technology that has happened over there. And the shift that we are seeing happening in technology now is, as Sir mentioned, is going at a far faster rate. Now, I spent many years both in the IT industry, in companies like Wipro Infotech and HP and DEC, and also as a faculty at Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies. I was responsible for the information systems area at NMIMS, School of Business Management. I spent, practically all my 20, 30, 25 years convincing people, companies, of the need to link your information systems, your information technology with your business. What was happening is that your IT strategy moves in one direction,
Correct.
your business strategy moves in another direction.
Exactly.
So that was a big problem that was happening. Today, I don't see that need. Today, it's the other way around.
That's right.
But that's where the danger is. A little knowledge is a very dangerous thing.
That's right.
So people, because technology has become so democratic now,
Yeah.
it's so easy to use by the common person. Sometimes people think, because they know how to operate Instagram, they're a computer scientist. But it's a long, long way off. Another thing is, the need to constantly learn. One thing has remained common, though, Sir has seen far more generations than I have of technology. But I was at an era when I joined in 1978. That was the time Apple and Microsoft had just, Intel also, were just kind of launching off,
Yeah.
And so it was a very, what Sir mentioned about DCM data products. It was a very, DCM data products used to outsource a lot of research
Yeah.
to our computer science students at BITS Pilani. Yeah. So we also kind of tinkered around and played around with that IBM 1130 in those days. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But today, of course, we are talking of a lot of technology gone exponentially. But the one thing that has remained constant is learning.
That's right.
Constant learning, constant unlearning. And I think as a faculty, because I'm a teacher, I'm a faculty, so, it's very important that all of us have this built into our DNA. And I don't necessarily mean a degree or, some formal, but that curiosity,
Exactly.
that need to constantly learn.
That's right.
For example, science, what Sir was mentioning, science, there's so much all around us, nature, and we can actually learn from that itself, But I guess this is where we as teachers also have a long way to go. We have to instill that curiosity in children. You see, for example, I'm reading a book right now called Biomimicry.
Right.
Okay, so there's so much to learn from nature.
Yeah.
Architects, science, technology, designers, everybody, because nature is perfect. Nature has evolved over millions of years, and nature doesn't make mistakes. But can you find that connection in nature?
Yeah.
For example, if a teacher, a mathematics teacher is teaching Fibonacci sequence to a bunch of school kids, right? Then she should probably take the kids out on the garden and show them a petal flower which follows the Fibonacci sequence. That is a lot more realistic, rather than just studying from, quote, exam point of view, unquote. You know, that is the challenge. So this is one thing that I've seen constantly, common, which is the need to constantly learn, unlearn, relearn. And that will remain. And that will actually help you remain young also.
Absolutely.
Because every time you're learning new things.
Yeah.
And be open to learning from everyone. Just yesterday we was in another panel discussion. We were speaking of reverse mentoring. You know, mentoring earlier meant a senior person mentoring a junior. But today you can, as long as you're open, you can learn from a youngster also.
Yeah.
A senior person can learn from a young. So be open-minded. And that will not change, no matter even if it's 10G and 20G and whatever that happens.
No,
That's my-
very, very true. In fact, I have to say, Exhibit A, as far as the hunger for learning is concerned, is Sir himself. So even, I alluded to this earlier, even while he was Chief Minister, sometimes we would have to go and disturb him in the library to say, you have a routine starting at 6 a.m. tomorrow. It's 2 a.m. Would you like to go to sleep? Because he would be with his books, underlining things and highlighting paragraphs which he would want to use in a speech or, for his own reference for a bill he was working on, so on and so forth. Then his life became even more hectic after he went back to the assembly. So then he started listening to podcasts. So because he travels to Karad so often, he said, okay, I will adapt because my hunger has to be satiated. So I'll move to podcasts. So, if someone like him can find the time to keep himself abreast of all the changes taking place, I think few have excuses to maintain that curiosity. And with that, if I have everyone's permission, I think we can close the panel. And I'll request Shardul to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. So I would, thank you for your kind words. And we here at Esmagico are definitely striving to build domain-specific models as of now, which solve very specific problems for India and the world in general. And we hope that we will be very successful in doing that. I would like to thank all of you, Nilay sir, Chavan sir, for joining us, and Naman for moderating this. And the pleasure is all ours. And the team here at Esmagico is very privileged to have you here. And I would like everybody to please congratulate everybody here on the panel. And I think it was very informative for everybody. And we hope to keep doing these kind of sessions very regularly. Thank you very much. So if you would like to say something to the people.
Would you like to say something, sir?
No, I think let me wish the team at Esmagico all the best. You have created a great venture, got together I think what looks like a brilliant team from different walks of life, and we are completely focused on what you need to do. This is uncharted territory as you go ahead. There are issues about what should be built and what will sell, what will make it to a successful commercial venture, and at the same time, how will you add to the global knowledge pool? Because what you are working at the cutting edge of front line of the technology. Whatever you're doing here, similar work is being done. And I think best of the US universities or Chinese universities, unfortunately not Indian universities, but you people are doing that kind of work, which is very encouraging. And I hope the interface between the government policy makers and agencies like yours, the groups like yours, will increase. They'll realize the potential of individual entrepreneurship, individual efforts to build technology and to take the country into a higher orbit. I wish all of you, the young team here, all the best. It's very, very encouraging to see what a brilliant group of young technocrats, engineers can really produce. And that's what gives me the hope for future of India. Thank you again for inviting me. All the best to you. And we hope to hear good things from you in the future.
So would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure. So I also wish the Esmagico team all the very best. It's a nice new innovation which you're starting. and I'm sure, like Bitsian startups, I'm sure, technology startups, we always make it big. So you will not only make it big financially, but also you'll create a disruption in the environment, which will be good for the country as a whole. And I wish you all the best for that. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.